who went in to mop up, to clean up the filth and the mess that the Americans had created. The man who was sent to do the cleaning up job, the cleaner, was Mr. Richard Holbrooke. Now, this name you have to keep in mind because I'm going to refer to him again. Now, so basically, what happened was that when you want to dismember a huge country, you deploy a fourth generation war on it. And huge countries like even American government, they don't have too many blueprints how to dismember countries. Normally they use the same textbook. The American operations in Southern America against the Contras, almost the same operations were used in Afghanistan as well. Normally even these intelligence operators, agencies use the same textbook they have all over the world in their various operations. So post 9/11, when the Americans came into Afghanistan, before that, I would like to define what were the 6 grand strategic objectives for which the Americans have waged this, rather than Americans, I should use the word the Zionist neocons have waged this global war against the entire humanity. The grand strategic objectives of this war are 6 strategic objectives which they want to achieve in the 21st century.
Okay.
The first grand strategic objective is the defense of Israel.
Okay.
That is an irrevocable, absolutely uncompromisable stance. And defense of Israel demands that the Muslim countries in the Middle East and the greater Middle East must be denuclearized. So both these issues are one. Defense of Israel means denuclearization of the Muslim world. So therefore the first, most important, most critical aspect of this war that the American government is waging now. The second was the control of global fuel and mineral assets. That is again, the war is not just for oil. Oil is one of the reasons. There are also great natural and mineral resources in Pakistani Balochistan. The trillions of dollars worth of minerals, lithium, gold, copper, oil. I mean, you name a resource and mineral which God has created, produced on this earth, and this region has it in trillions of dollars worth. So naturally, that was for the 21st century, that was another grand strategic objective. The third, again very interesting one, was to control the global waterways which control the global trading. You note one thing, is that every waterway, every bottleneck, every thin waterway in the global oceans are surrounded by Muslim lands. Whether you go to Gibraltar, on one side of Gibraltar there is Muslim lands. Whether you go to Bosphorus, that's near Turkey. Whether you go to Suez, that's near Egypt, again surrounded by Muslim lands. You come to Horn of Africa, you have Yemen and Somalia. You come to Gulf, and that's where you have Iran and Saudi Arabia and Muslim lands. Yes. And then you go to Malacca Straits near Indonesia. So all these global waterways were surrounded by Muslim lands. So if any of the waterway is choked, for example, if Gibraltar is closed, or Suez is closed, or Horn of Africa is closed, or Suez is closed, or Arabian Gulf is closed, or Malacca Straits are closed, the entire global naval and trading movement would come to a stop. So that was again critical. That was the third grand strategic objective, to have the U.S. naval forces present around these regions to keep these lanes open for the U.S. interests and to block the movement of the hostile powers. Now, the fourth, again a very important one, was to destroy and control and decimate for Islam as a political, economic ideology. You see, right now what is happening is the only hindrance, the only ideology which is resisting the expansion of the Zionist order is Islam.
Yes.
It's the Muslims who are fighting all over the world. It's the Muslims who are resisting. And Muslims are not resisting on the power of military weapons or economy or on the basis of information warfare or media. Muslims are resisting on the power, on the basis of their strong ideology.
Yes.
Because what has happened is that this capitalism and communism, they are both immoral economic orders.
Yes.
They are both immoral social orders. And what they have done is, they have created a completely amoral, godless, chaotic society even in the West. And I feel sorry for the Western civilization. There are people, good people living there, who have become maybe economically stable to some extent, but morally bankrupt.
Well, let me just jump in here very quickly, if I could,
Yeah.
Zaid. We're not as stable as people think. I mean, that is the that is the excuse and the justification that the West always uses in holding up its economic model, is that we have stability. But here in the United States, and really throughout the West, for all intents and purposes, we are all slaves to the system. I mean, if the system shuts down, we don't eat, we don't drink, we don't have homes to live in, we don't have clothes on our backs. So it is not as stable as people may think. I mean, for example,
I agree with you. I agree with you, Marcus. I agree with you. But frankly, economics can be recovered and improved. But if the moral decay, if the social and the family life is disintegrated in any society, that society becomes so decadent that then it is disintegrated. Then it is decimated by the laws of nature. The societies sustain on human and moral values,
yes,
not on the quality of life,
and I
but
can
the quality of men.
Let me just add to what you're saying here, because I can only assume that you have not visited the United States. I can tell you that what you're saying is exactly correct. It is because of because of our economic system in many respects that our morals have gone completely down the tubes. The mothers are leaving the home to go out and to make more money to make ends meet, and then they have to stick their children into daycare and other forms of babysitting, which seriously harms the development of that child, particularly when that child is at its earliest developmental stage. And by the time that the parents have gotten home after working all day, they have no time to spend with their children, so that they basically have thrown their children to the mercy of this system that you're talking about. Those of us here in America and throughout the West, I think that we have become acclimated to this to the point where we don't recognize just how serious the destruction on family life has been.
And you see, this is the point, because if humanity right now needs any salvation, an ideology which can give them spiritual purification from within, the only uncorrupted, purified ideology left is Islam.
Yes.
And this is the power of this ideology that the Zionists are scared of, terrified of, because they know if humans start to adapt Islam as a spiritual, moral ideology, because Islam is not just a political, is not just a moral ideology, it's also a political and economic system.
Exactly.
Islam rejects the interest-based Zionist, fiat currency-based economic model. Islam rejects the communist style of political system. Islam rejects atheism. Islam rejects the exploitation of the labor and the poor people and the social class, and exploitation of the women and children, as you just mentioned.
Yes.
You see? So, and that is why you find the people who have everything in this world in life, who have enjoyed every luxury of it, are now looking for spiritual purification and turning to Islam. I mean, there are so many people. Even the sister-in-law of Tony Blair just recently, she converted to Islam, and this is probably the biggest slap on the face of that Zionist, that somebody so close to his family converted. Yeah. You see? And the point is that Islam brings an ideology which is a counter ideology, which is a more powerful ideology to the ideology of Zionism, capitalism, or communism.
Yes.
And this is the purest form sent by God still existing. The Quran exists in its original form. So destruction of Islam as an ideology is one of the most vital strategic objectives of the U.S. movement within this region. The fifth grand strategic objective is encirclement of Russia, because Russia is again trying to regroup itself. And the sixth grand strategic objective is the encirclement of China. So you see, if the American people, if the analysts, the media anchors, the good people in the Western society understand the six grand strategic objectives, you will understand every move that the Americans make in this region.
Can I ask you a question here, Zaid? When we talk about the Americans being involved in all of this, would you agree with me that because depending on who you talk to, some will say that America is controlling Israel, and others will say that Israel is controlling America. I would say that this is one of these cases where, generally speaking, Israel has more influence over American foreign policy than the Americans themselves do. However, there are people in the American power structure who have interests in seeing all of this take place as well, irrespective of how it may play out with Israel. Now, for example, you have Brzezinski, who you have referenced quite a bit in your writings. Brzezinski is not one we would consider necessarily a big fan of Zionism. However, he is very concerned about Russia. And so, in this regard, you will see Brzezinski supporting the actions taking place in Pakistan and Afghanistan, this encirclement of Russia that you're talking about. Could you maybe go into a little bit, I hate to take you off track with what you were talking about, but could you go into a little bit of an explanation as to how this very deadly dance between the American power structure and the Zionist interest works?
You see, Glenn, there is absolutely no doubt about this fact that it's the Israelis which control the bloodline, economy, politics, military, and the foreign policy of the United States of America. Mm-hmm. The Israelis have created such powerful, massive lobbies, and you understand this better than me. The Zionist American different committees and power groups and power lobbies and how they're control of the American media, all these. At the same time, these people have created a very useful team of the Americans who are now convinced, whom I would call the useful idiots of the Israelis, okay, who are now convinced that the American muscle and American might and power should be used. Basically, they are American patriots. And to some extent, they would be interested in the American interest, but they are useful idiots to the Israelis that they are being drawn into those alleys which have dead ends. And basically, you see, the Americans were sent into Vietnam, and they were sent by the Americans. At that time, neocons and Zionists were not that strong controlling the American foreign policy, but they sent Americans to Vietnam to die. There were useful, stupid idiots always present in any administration. So, and especially, there are so many Americans who sincerely feel that the Americans should exploit the advantage they have right now for the 21st century. But what they don't know is that while their desire for American dominance is being exploited by the Israelis for the ulterior objective of expansion of Zionism and the destruction of the Muslim lands in the greater Middle East, so that a greater concept of a greater Israel can be created. So, with these six grand strategic objectives, when the Americans decide to invade Afghanistan under the facade of war on terror, even a naive idiot knew that they're not here to chase Osama bin Laden. They're not here to capture. They're not here for this kind of massive global movement is not done to capture a phantom man living in the caves of Tora Bora. These kind of, anybody who understands military mobilization, anybody who understands the geopolitics taking place, the media psyops that are being built, simultaneously, these six grand strategic objectives were being achieved. In 1981, while the Iran-Iraq war was going on, Israelis went in and destroyed the Osirak nuclear reactor of Iraq.
Yes.
And very few Americans know that in 1984, Israelis and Indians made a joint attempt of a joint strike on the Pakistani nuclear reactor at Kahuta. But it was the Pakistan Air Force, entire Pakistan Air Force went airborne to defend that attack, and the Israelis had to go back halfway. People don't know about this.
No, I've never even heard of this. Now, you're telling me that
That's what I'm telling you.
This is in what year that this took place, Zaid?
This is in 1984.
1984. And the nuclear reactor
in
Pakistan was where?
In Kahuta, the Kahuta Nuclear Research Laboratory, like the Dimona in Israel, like the Osirak in Iraq. The Pakistani nuclear reactor is Kahuta, K-A-H-U-T-A.
Okay.
And you will, if you Google it, you'll find the references of this. Now, so Pakistan knew that from long time ago that Israelis are working on an active covert plan to target and attack Pakistani nuclear program.
Wow. Okay.
And even in 1998, when Pakistan detonated its nuclear bombs in mountains of Balochistan, there were active reports of a possible attack on Pakistan from Israel, combined attack from India and Israel to prevent Pakistan from detonating the nuclear bomb. So Pakistan is aggressively being targeted by combined Indians and Israelis. You see, Indians, if you remember, are riding the tide of